What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. We are coming to you guys in the new year. It is 2025, and it is a different era for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Not for
Oh,
me. I'm still in 2024, man. It feels so weird. All these people that I've talked to throughout the course of the night, they're all celebrating. The ball has dropped already. They're on to 2025. And I'm still sitting here like I'm in the past or something like that. The ghost of New Year's past. It's still 2024 for me.
for another hour, it is
Yeah.
2024 for Chris. We are recording this at 2:05 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so that equates to 11 p.m. on the West Coast. But for all purposes going forward, as this will air approximately at 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, it'll be the
Yeah.
new year. So, Chris, I know we want to talk a lot about what happened tonight against the Los Angeles Lakers as the Cavs came away with a 122-110 victory. It was also the eighth time that the Cavs have won in consecutive games by 10 or more points. It's just the second time in franchise history that the Cavs have been able to do that. The last time was in 2008. And of course, we knew who was heading that offense back in the day. But, Chris, this was a momentous occasion, not only because it was the last game of 2024 for the Cleveland Cavaliers, but it was also the first game that LeBron James played against a team after his 40th birthday. He became the first player in NBA history to play as a teenager and as a 40-year-old. Just speak on the moment of being able to cover a game before the new year and also understanding how much he has impacted not only the game itself, but also just the Cleveland Cavaliers organization.
Ethan Kenny Atkinson talked about it before the game, and he said one of the things he wishes he would have had the opportunity to do throughout the course of his coaching career was to be around LeBron on a daily basis. Just to see like everything that goes into LeBron becoming the person that he is today and becoming the player that he is today. And everybody just marvels at him. And you have to marvel at him. Like, this guy is 40 years old and he's still racing up and down the floor. He's still flying to the rim. He's still finishing these ridiculous shots. He hit the three in the corner that caused an eruption inside the arena. Like, there were roars. It was ringing inside that arena because of how excited they were after that three that he hit. It was right around the 3-minute mark. It cut the Cavs lead down to 5. And I was talking to a few different Cavs players after the game, and they kind of had like an uh-oh moment because that's LeBron. And it would have been so LeBron to ring in the new year, to play his first game as a 40-year-old, to just do something miraculous at the end of the game. And he almost did. That three was huge. Like I said, it made it a 2-possession game. But to the Cavs' credit, they responded. They didn't panic. They didn't hang their heads. They didn't get caught up in what usually can happen when playing against a LeBron team. Like, oh, bleep, here we go again with this dude. They just calmly went down the other end of the floor. They executed their offense. Jarrett Allen hit a baby hook. Then after that, he had a soaring dunk. Then after that, he had another soaring dunk. And that was all. So I think it just shows the maturity of the Cavs. I think it shows the composure of the Cavs. But when it comes to LeBron, Kenny Atkinson said it before the game. Coaches around the NBA are talking about him on a daily basis. Just how special it is that he's able to perform still at this kind of level at the age that he's at right now. And he said it the other day. He said he could probably play at a high level for another 5 to 7 years. Guess what? I don't doubt that. He's not going to play another 5 to 7 years. It's not going to happen. But I don't doubt that he could, because the one thing that I learned covering LeBron James for all the years that I did, Ethan, is that you never doubt him. because he's going to prove people wrong constantly. I think it was like 5 years ago or something like that. People were like, LeBron doesn't have the same kind of athleticism that he once had. LeBron doesn't have the same kind of lift that he used to have. LeBron's not aging as gracefully as maybe we thought he was going to. And here he is, 40 years old, doing all these kinds of things. Not to the same level that he used to, duh, because that would be impossible. But still doing them at a high enough level that he can help the Lakers win. They're thinking about a potential playoff spot. He still strikes fear in an opposing team. So I just, like everybody else around the NBA, and everybody else that covers the NBA, I try not to take LeBron for granted. I try not to take these moments where you get an opportunity to see him in person and feel the athleticism, feel the speed, feel the talent, feel the grace, feel the vision, all that kind of stuff. You just try not to take it for granted because it's not going to be there much longer. If I had to guess, I would say next year is going to be the last one for LeBron. So every time I get an opportunity to talk to him, every time I get an opportunity to watch him play either on TV or in person, I'm savoring it.
Unlucky for him as he began to celebrate his 40th birthday and a new era of his journey in the NBA, he had to deal with probably one of the only teams that would give him such a fight, even when he had guys like Austin Reeves go off for 30 plus, Anthony Davis 20 plus, and himself having a decent game as well. But JJ Redick said it after the game. You have to play close to perfect basketball if you expect to beat the Cleveland Cavaliers this season. And it's because of the spread offense that they have, the spread out offense that they have, the opportunities that everybody on the floor has to make a difference. And it's interesting when you talk about we just a couple of days ago, Chris, we discussed how important Jarrett Allen is to this team. You reported on it, you wrote about it, and we discussed it about he doesn't get a whole lot of love. He's underappreciated throughout the league, and but he's not underappreciated for the Cavs. And tonight was
Mm-hmm.
one of those nights where you knew coming in that you were going to need him against Anthony Davis. And we had this kind of similar conversation again earlier into the season when they first played. But tonight he did a little bit more. In the fourth quarter, Jarrett Allen had 13 points on a perfect 6 of 6 field goals and finished the night with 27 points on 85.7% shooting from the field, 14 rebounds, 3 blocks. He's the first player in Cavs history to reach these numbers in a single game. The last NBA player to do this was Clint Capella in November 2018. So, Chris, do you think this was enough or a New Year's Eve game against LeBron James in his first game after turning 40 years old against Anthony Davis? And I saw on the interweb that people were having the argument that Anthony Davis is still the second best player on the Los Angeles Lakers. I think Jared Allen just outdueled the best player on the Los Angeles Lakers when it comes to Anthony Davis and how he's contributed to their success and how LeBron James has tried to hand over the reins to Davis over the last couple of years, especially when you talk about his time winding down. Jared Allen, although has showed himself to be a pretty good kryptonite for Anthony Davis.
I just think it's one of the things that makes the Cavs so special, Ethan, is that they have so many different options within their offense. They have so much firepower. They have so many pathways to winning a game on a nightly basis. They have so many answers to what a defense is going to do for them. And they just get so many contributions up and down this roster. And it is a core four. And I think too many people have overlooked Jarrett and not appreciated him enough. I totally get it. I totally get it. This year, the future, a big part of that is about Darius Garland and Evan Mobley taking the next step, becoming more empowered, just being ready for what postseason basketball is going to throw at them. And part of the reason why Donovan has willingly taken a step back, and part of the reason why Jarrett has willingly taken a step back, is because they understand the importance of Darius and Evan. They understand that in some cases they've been there, they've done things on the postseason stage, they've had a level of success. They know better what to expect. They have more experience. And in the regular season, if you can get Darius to build these championship habits and Evan to build these championship habits and to get him more involved offensively and all these different things, if those things can happen throughout the course of the regular season, it's just going to be better preparation for what's ahead. So everything that the Cavs have done to this point through the first 33 games, Ethan, it's been purposeful. And Jarrett told me the other day, like, he has no problem taking a step back for Evan, because part of it is he loves Evan. He believes in Evan. As he said it, Evan is not a D head. And it makes it easier to do that for that kind of person who is about all the right things, who does all the right things. But the other thing is that, like, Jarrett understands how important Evan is to the success of this team in the spring and beyond. Jarrett understands Evan's importance to this organization becoming a championship level organization. And if that means that he gets fewer shot attempts, so be it. If that means that he doesn't play end of game situations, every end of game situation, then so be it. If that means that he's fourth on the team in touches as opposed to third on it, then so be it. Like, Jarrett's willing to make that sacrifice because he knows it's going to make the Cavs the best version of themselves. In saying all of that, even though so much of this is about Darius's maturation and Evan's maturation, that doesn't mean that the significance of Jarrett has dwindled at all. It means his production has. It means his role has. It means his touches have. It means that the minutes have changed, and like all these different factors throughout this season have changed with Jarrett. But his importance hasn't, right? His significance hasn't. And I think that's something that people need to constantly be reminded of. And we did this a lot with Kevin Love during the LeBron era, right? When you're the third member of the big three, or in this case, you're Jarrett, you're the fourth member of the core four, it's easier to overlook that guy, right? It's easy to wonder, like, how important is he? Is he really needed? And I just think these kinds of games against the likes of Anthony Davis, or the other night against Nikola Jokic, they're a great reminder of the importance of Jarrett and the kind of team that they are when he's playing at this level. Kenny Atkinson said it the other night. He repeated it tonight. When Jarrett Allen plays at a high level at both ends of the floor, and it doesn't have to be 27 and 14, but if he's engaged, if he's active, if he's just making his presence felt on the interior, when he's playing at that level, the Cavs are really, really difficult to beat. And the numbers show that. When he's been on the floor, when he's been healthy over the last 4 or 5 years, the Cavs have been, one of the best teams in the NBA. When he hasn't been healthy, when he hasn't been at his best, when he's missed time, the Cavs have been a middling team that hovers right around 500. Because despite, the shot attempts, despite the points per game, despite all those things, he is integral to their success because he's involved in so many different facets of what they do at both ends of the floor. And that's not going to change. Even if Evan Mobley becomes this MVP candidate in the future, like the Cavs expect him to become, even if Darius becomes this perennial all-star and Jarrett remains the fourth member of the core four, his importance is always going to be there, even if the production is not.
And Chris, on a night where we talk a lot about productivity and production was not one of the strong suits for the two guards tonight when it comes to
Yeah.
putting the ball in the basket. Both of them shot under, or Donovan shot 40% from the field and Darius shot 31.3, so 40% and below. They still combined for 40 points. And Darius Garland got it done as a passer, showcasing his ability to play make with 14 assists, a new season high. And Chris, one of the most important things I believe we've talked about on this podcast is how on any given night it can be anybody's night, and it's
Mm-hmm.
because Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell are so good about getting off the ball and finding their moments to score. Obviously, we talk about Donovan Mitchell having multiple three pointers in multiple different quarters and being able to go back to back or feel his hot hand. And then, if he's not hitting, be able to get off the ball and create space for others with the gravity that he has as an all star MVP caliber player. The other helpful portion of that is that when your two bigs are averaging nearly 60% from the floor, right? And Evan Mobley tonight, 8 of 14, 2 of 4 from three, 20 points, 57.1% from the field. It was just another game where you saw his productivity and his evolution continue, especially against Anthony Davis and other bigs when it comes to the Los Angeles Lakers. But the biggest thing for me, Chris, and I know you wrote about this on Twitter, was how Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell were they did it on purpose, getting
Mm-hmm.
Max Strus involved and making sure that he was able to get his rhythm going. Max has struggled since he's been back on the offensive end, but he's done a lot of other winning basketball things. In tonight's game, he got his offensive stroke a little bit better. 4 of 8 from three, 5 of 9 from the field, 15 points. And Chris, I wanted to pick your brain on how important you thought this was, and also understanding how important Max is in the long-term success of the Cleveland Cavaliers.
I think this is obviously a lengthier conversation here, Ethan, and I think it's multi-layered too. And I think we start here. Um, when you're talking about the Cavs matching up in springtime with New York, Milwaukee, maybe Atlanta, Boston for sure, those types of teams, Max becomes one of their more important players. And Max, both ends of the floor. Max is a guy who has a bunch of playoff experience. Max is a guy who has battled the likes of Milwaukee and Boston in the past. And you need somebody like him who has that playoff level maturity. You need somebody like him who's going to create a whole bunch of chaos on the offensive end of the floor, who's going to attract attention, who's going to create a level of gravity that opens things up for Donovan, Darius, and some of these other guys. You need his competitiveness, you need his toughness, you need his physicality, both when it comes to rebounding and when it comes to defending. So that's first and foremost. The other thing is this. I think there were some, not concerns, because I don't want to overplay it. Let's just say it this way. There was legitimate wonder from people inside the organization about how Max would take to a bench role in coming back from his injury. Like, could he still find his rhythm? Would he still be as effective? Would, Karis LeVert, Ty Jerome, whoever it would be that would be on the floor with Max, would they be able to get him as involved offensively the way that Donovan and Darius can? All those different questions, they lingered longer because Max was still finding his rhythm, because Max was still on a minute restriction, because Max was still trying to work his way back and shake off the rust and stuff like that. So I think tonight was really important. I think it showed the Cavs that even in this kind of role. Now, look, like part of the reason why his role expanded a little bit was because Sam Merrill left the game. He sprained his ankle in the first half, and he wasn't available for the second half. Um, so that kind of like pushed Max up the rotation ladder, and it made things a little bit easier for Kenny Atkinson to play some of these guys more minutes. Um, so I think there are legitimate questions about like how's this all going to look when they have all 11 guys. But I think this was an important thing because Max in this particular role showed that he could be effective, coming off the bench, providing a spark, not getting an opportunity to really like work his way into the game, just like instant offense, boom, just like that. And I think it answered some questions that the Cavs had. And I think it gives them a little bit of freedom here, Ethan, to continue to roll with Dean Wade in the starting lineup, which is a very, very effective group. They've lost one game all season long with Dean Wade in the starting lineup. One. And they're aware of that number. And I know that I've been talking about it all year long that, when Max isn't on a minute restriction and he's back and he's ready to go, he's going to go in the starting lineup. And down the road, I still believe that the Cavs are looking at it like that. But this team is rolling right now. And Dean Wade is a big part of that. Dean Wade being in the starting lineup is a big part of that. And I think when you see Max have this kind of game, this kind of impact in this kind of role, a lesser role than what was envisioned coming into this year, it allows Kenny Atkinson to keep going with Dean. And I think Max understands that Kenny's probably going to keep going with Dean. And I think Max is going to accept, I think he's going to have it easier when it comes to accepting that Kenny's probably going to keep going with Dean. And the starting spot that was supposed to be Max's, maybe it doesn't happen until February. Maybe it doesn't happen until March. Maybe it doesn't happen until an injury. But I just think it gives Kenny the flexibility and the freedom to continue to go to a lineup that ultimately he wants to right now. And he should want to, because this lineup is doing really, really well. And, the old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But like Kenny needed to see, I think Kenny needed to see, I think Max needed to see, I think Darius needed to see, I think Donovan, I think everybody in this organization needed to see this kind of game from Max. And he delivered. And that's part of what I was talking about earlier with what makes the Cavs so special. Like, they got nothing from Karis LeVert really offensively tonight. They got nothing from Sam Merrill offensively tonight. They got very little from Ty Jerome off the bench offensively tonight. But Max found a way to spark that second unit. He anchored that second unit. He stabilized that second unit. And he provided some scoring balance between the starters and the bench guys because of what he was able to do coming off the bench. And it just shows the depth and the firepower of this team, that on a night that Dean Wade barely does anything offensively and the other guys that I mentioned barely do anything offensively, they have a guy like Max who is a starting caliber wing coming off their bench for a variety of different reasons. And he's able to give you 15 and he's able to bang 4 threes.
The mayor of Dean Wade Island has returned. I know
I'm telling you, I think they want to stick with it. I think they want to stick with that starting lineup, and I think they're going to stick with that starting lineup.
And I know we've both been big Dean Wade guys this entire season. I think I've been a little bit more of a proponent for Dean to have a role in the starting lineup, obviously down the road because of his size. And you talked about it, the different difficulties of going up against teams like Boston, New York, Oklahoma City, you name it, these different teams that have lengthy wings. But I think the interesting part about that is the fact that Dean Wade can also guard all of those guys as well. It's not like he can't small ball up and be a 3 or expand to be a 5. I think Dean Wade gives you all those different options. And my favorite part about this conversation is that we're talking about this and are confident in doing so in a night where Dean Wade had 3 points and was 1 of 4 from the field and 0
Right.
of 3 from three, because we understand what he brings to the entire team. He
Yeah.
had 9 rebounds, 2 assists. He was a plus minus of 9. The only two players that had a higher plus minus than him were Darius Garland and Jarrett Allen. So you talk
Mm-hmm.
about the importance of that and how he continues to uplift the entire team. And he's not a high volume guy as much as Max Strus. Doesn't need the ball in his hands, but still has the gravity that teams know that he can shoot and make threes when it counts. But Chris, you
And I think
mentioned
the other thing, Ethan, and I think this is important too, um, and it seems so simple, but it's not the case on every team. Each guy on this team basically asks themselves a question of, what can I do to best make an impact? What can I do to best make a difference? And Dean Wade knows that it's not scoring 15 a night, and he's okay with that. You know what I mean? And like, that's important. Like, can you impact a game without a bunch of touches? Can you impact the game without a bunch of shots? Can you impact the game without scoring a bunch of points? And, some guys, the definition of whether they impact the game or not is predicated on how many shots do they get? How many points do they score? But the Cavs have so many different guys that can find a way to make a difference, a positive difference, without scoring the ball, which is a beautiful thing to have. And it doesn't mean they can't score the ball, and it doesn't mean that they're not capable of it. And we saw the other night, Dean was able to find his shooting touch. Um, but it doesn't have to be the only thing in his toolkit. He can make an impact by rebounding. He can make an impact with his versatility. He can make an impact just by switching on the defensive end of the floor and giving the Cavs an ability to switch a little bit more freely and easier, because of his size, because of his length, because of his athleticism, because of his ability to guard 1 through 5. And Karis LeVert, on a night that he goes 1 for 4, think about Karis, like early on in his career, that like if he didn't score buckets, if he didn't have a good night shooting, like there were conversations about his ineffectiveness. There were conversations about his inefficiency or whatever. And I know Karras wasn't great tonight, but he was active. He was engaged on the defensive end. He brought energy. He was flying around the court. Those things are valuable. George Niang, George Niang was spacing the floor. George Niang was running up and down the court. George Niang was battling and putting his body into guys and stuff like that. So even Darius, 5 of 16 from the field, 3 of 8 or 2 of 8 from 3-point range. Okay, it wasn't my night shooting. How can I best impact this team? And he found a different way to do it. And it was setting up Jarrett Allen. It was setting up Evan Mobley. It was setting up Max Strus. It was getting other guys involved. You know what I mean? Like, multifaceted players are sprinkled across this roster, and you're seeing each guy, and it's not the same for some of these guys on a nightly basis, but they're just asking themselves, like, okay, what can I do tonight to best impact this team? I'm going to go and play to that particular role. And I think it's a beautiful thing to watch when you see that level of basketball selflessness.
that's the buy-in of this team, Chris. That's the buy-in of
Yeah.
the camaraderie and the chemistry that they've built from playing together for 2.5 years now since Donovan Mitchell's been traded here, right? So it feels like it's a group that understands what everybody is capable of and understanding that and has the confidence that if they are not having the best night in one particular area, that they can lean on the other players around
Mm-hmm.
them. And that's not a common commodity in the NBA today, because a lot of different star players and players with high pressure roles think that they have to go do it themselves. And you kind of saw it in today's game, right? Anthony Davis, Austin Reeves, LeBron James.
Yeah.
Those are the guys that the Lakers turned to. The Cavs were able to lean on multiple different players at different times. But I
Right.
want to wrap this up with this stat that I read last night, talking about Dean Wade, which continues to improve as the Cavs' record improves. The Cavs are now 89-33 with Dean Wade on the floor since trading for Donovan Mitchell. They are 39-36 without him in that span. That's the Cavs are currently on a 72 win pace this season. They've lost one game with Dean Wade on the floor. They've won 23, I believe it is. And in comparison, that 39-36 record would be a 43 win pace. So you understand how good this team is with Dean Wade on the floor, how he impacts all the different aspects of the game. We went into it on this podcast. It's definitely
About
good.
freaking time you're willing to admit it, Ethan.
Me? What are we talking about? Hey, I know we're going to get some flack and coming into the new year from all of our YouTube listeners and all of our subtexters about how we keep harping on this guy. But I feel like people are starting to smell the roses, Chris. They're starting to understand. They're starting to lean into it. Come join us on Dean Wade Island, obviously. Chris Fedor is your mayor. I don't know what my role is. I might just be the city hall manager or whatever it's called. But
You can
wrap
be the
up.
janitor.
Oh no! Don't do me
It
like that.
took you way too long to come around on Dean Wade Island. And
It
I
took
threw
me halfway through last year.
I know.
Halfway.
I know. I threw stat after stat after stat at you. I tried different methods. I tried different ways of presenting my case, and it just took you so long to come around. There was actually somebody too that was there on Media Row that was watching the Cavs for another team, and they just kept looking back at me because we were talking a little bit before the game in the dinner room. And, when Dean would do some positive things, whether it was battle Anthony Davis on a switch or try and guard LeBron and stay in front of him, which is not easy to do, even at 40 years old, like that same person that was talking to me during dinner would turn around and just kind of look at me. And I was like, hey, man, like I've been trying to say it. Like my guy, former ESPN employee Zach Lowe, was trying to say it to all y'all too. Like Kevin O'Connor, previously from The Ringer, was trying to tell y'all too. Like I know sometimes it's hard to believe because he went undrafted and he started in the G League and whatever other reason you want to throw out there, because I'm sure there are other numerous ones. But like this team, it's probably a little bit scary for them how much they need Dean Wade, but they need Dean Wade. Like
Chris.
they are going to be the best version of themselves with Dean Wade. And we were talking earlier about Max Strus and his importance against all those other teams. Like Dean Wade is right there. So I know we're going to wrap up the podcast, but I'll say this. Like take Dean Wade out of any trade in any trade machine that you pull up on ESPN.com, because Dean Wade is the kind of player that theoretically you would want the Cavs to add. And they already have him.
Chris, you can make the notion, and it is true that in my first NBA season covering the team, it was like week 3 when we had the conversation of George Niang versus Dean Wade, and I was like, George Niang is shooting better, so we're gonna go that way. But don't make it out to be like it took me till the Boston Celtics series to figure out that Dean Wade was the better. It wasn't even by All-Star break. Come on, man. Don't
All right,
make
fine.
me.
You can be my deputy commissioner of public information. How about that?
Hey, I'm coming through with all the stats. I love it. Public
That's what I'm
information,
saying,
baby.
right? Just throw out those numbers left and right. Dean Wade this, Dean Wade that, Dean Wade this, Dean Wade that. Yes.
Much better than janitor. I appreciate the upgrade. It only took about 30 seconds. I won't be too mad. I won't hold it against you. But thank you guys, everybody that tuned in for the 2024 year. This was a momentous year for the podcast. We were putting up numbers that we hadn't in the entirety of the podcast. And I'm so glad that we have been able to give you a lot of insight. And Chris has been able to give you all the insider information that we have obtained throughout the last year. It looks like that the Cavs are going to have a continued of a great season. It's already a historic run, but to find out how it ends, you'll have to continue and come with us into 2025 as we continue this journey of the Cleveland Cavaliers 2024-2025 NBA season. But with that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs Insider and interact with Chris, me, and Jimmy by subscribing to Subtext. This is where you can send in your questions for this week's rendition of Hey Chris. We've already gotten some text about it because I know we missed you guys last week with the holidays. This is going to be a fun episode. So if you want to have your little shout out on the podcast, get your questions involved, sign up for a 14-day free trial, or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word stop. It's easy. But we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me, Chris, and Jimmy. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.